If you've ever thought of insurance as one of those tomorrow's problems, you're not alone. Some of those other problems include going to the dentist, getting your car fixed, having your skin checked. As you could imagine, having done this for a really long time, I completely understand that insurance is not often on the top of your priority list. In this video, I'm going to share with you some of the science of procrastination and how this idea of putting insurance into that tomorrow's problem zone is really common and what you can do to stop it. I'll also share with you my journey of procrastination and how it's affected me over the time, so stay tuned to find out more. Hi there, it's Craig Bigelow, the founder and head insurance expert here at True Pride. We bring out 3 videos a week, Monday, Wednesday and Friday, all around insurance, helping to make insurance easy for you. So if you're new here, consider subscribing. Abraham Lincoln has a great quote saying that you cannot escape the responsibility of tomorrow by evading it today. When it comes to insurance, I certainly put it in that category of being tomorrow's problem. As I mentioned in the intro, other things that fall into this same category are things like going to the dentist, getting your car fixed, reviewing the super funds that you have, looking at your skin checks. All those sorts of things fall into what I call tomorrow's problem zone. With each of the different examples I just mentioned, they all have some really common characteristics. The first characteristic that they share is that they tend to get worse with time. Take the example of the dentist. If you're anything like me, you've probably put this off for longer than you should have. And by the time you actually sat in that chair to go through the process of having everything sorted out, things were much worse as a result of you having left it longer than you should have. The second key characteristic that these share is that they're often more expensive to fix given the time that we've left them. The car example here is a perfect one to highlight this point, whereas if we've done the general servicing along the way, then often the complications that we have to deal with that service time are much smaller. On the other hand, we've left it too long, we've missed those regular services, then the problems that we face are generally much greater and a lot more expensive at the same time. The third characteristic that these things share is that they're often a lot easier when you actually get to them than what's been built up in your head. This is something that I'm sure you're familiar with as well, but for me, these are things like a phone call that you've meant to have made or anything along those lines that you've put off and put off and put off. When you actually pick up the phone and make that phone call, it's so much easier than what you thought it was going to be when you've built it up in your head. The fourth key characteristic and final one that I believe that these things share is that you promise yourself that you'll never do it again. But we all know that willpower isn't enough on its own, and we need a system to create a way of getting these things done, or else we all know that we're going to fall back in the same habits and the same patterns as we've always relied on. I got thinking about this after reading an awesome article on Medium by Darius Faroo. I hope I pronounced his name right. In this article, Darius had hand-drawn an image that shows his attitude towards school, and it really resonated with me, and I'm sure it will for a lot of you, that at the start of the semester or start of the term everything was pretty cool, calm and collected, but by the time that exams came around he started shitting himself, and that anxiety went up, the stress went up and the pressure went up at the same time. In business, I've seen a really similar pattern happening too. So each year we have annual accreditation exams that we need to get done by the 30th of June. The 28th of June rolls around, I'll get 50 reminders about doing it, but I choose to do it all in one hit at the same time every year. Again, promising myself that I'll never do that ever again. And when it comes to paying bills, I'm exactly the same as well, and I'm sure you've felt this one too. You've got a whole list of things that are due, and you wait until the due date to pay it, as opposed to setting up and doing the payment straight away, or just getting it off your list. All these sort of things build up, and the pressure mounts. That looming deadline seems to be really important, or was really important in my life, to make me have the motivation to get things done. But science shows that all of this procrastination comes at a price. Again, in Darius's article, he references a highly cited study published in the American Psychological Society Journal, authored by Diane Tice and Roy Baumeister, which discusses the cost of procrastination. And it's related to things like depression, irrational beliefs, low self-esteem, anxiety, and levels of stress. As Darius points out, it's serious, and it is something that I've also suffered from for years and years. It's this procrastination, and it's a habit, and it's really, really difficult to shake. So what can you do about it? Unfortunately, willpower alone isn't going to change and make us better at beating procrastination, but systems will. So when it comes to this, things that have really worked for me are using the procrastination inside of me, such as self-imposed deadlines, working or studying in intervals, so short bursts of energy rather than an extended period of time over a whole day, Something really useful here I've found is the Pomodoro technique, and I'll put a link to that in the notes. Eliminating distractions is powerful. So if you haven't already done it, check where you're spending your time. There's a really good tool called Rescue Time. So if you use that, you'll be able to see exactly where you're spending your time online. But most importantly is internal motivation and what drives you to get this done. Bringing it back to insurance, it's this internal motivation that I find is the key trigger for getting people to actually do the insurance in the end. We all know what we need to get done in a day. We all know what we need to get done at a certain period of time. What happens is eventually the internal motivation, getting the insurance sorted, becomes so real and becomes so powerful that you actually take the steps needed to get it done. In my experience, these are typically big events in life, such as taking on a huge amount of debt where you're sort of faced with the reality of what would happen if something happened to your income, starting a family. Those sorts of big milestones in your life are the things that trigger that internal motivation that's required to get some of these pretty shitty jobs done. If procrastination is something that you've struggled with, I'd love to hear your story too of how you overcame it and some of the tips that you've got for getting through some of those tasks. Please share them with me in the comments section below. Hey there, it's Biggs. Thanks for checking out the video. If you like these videos and you want to see more, we bring out a new video around the insurance topic every weekday. So hit that subscribe button next to me. Be notified when we release these videos. We love your support. We're here to build the community and we want to bring you more videos. Thanks again for tuning in. I'll chat to you soon.